Hi, everyone. Is your family going through a loss? That loss could be a job, a home, maybe it's divorce. Maybe there's something going on too with your child. They just feel disconnected and distant, and you're wondering like what's going on. So because life is really not predictable, right? We already know that life is not predictable. In some ways, that's good, but also what is predictable sometimes, though, that we don't even know about are the resources that are available for us. Our guest today is someone who has witnessed firsthand, has been on the front lines in terms of what can really happen when agencies such as schools and law enforcement and the hospitals and the courts and everybody like comes together in a way that's so synergistic to support those families that do have those times of crisis. And so we're going to talk today about some of the resources that might be available in your county, and every county can be different and every state can be different. But I bet if you reach out, you're going to find out some things you did not know even existed. That's what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Cheryl Bassett, and I am the founder of Unstoppable Connections, international bestseller, and creator of the Unstoppable Family Meeting Toolkit. I am also the host of this show, Kitchen Table Conversations, as part of the Edge Network. My family went through some challenges, and out of that, we created what we call the 4 gifts. And those 4 gifts create an unshakable, unbreakable foundation for families. And so we honor that process in the show. And if you'd like to learn more about the 4 gifts, you can go to my website, unstoppableconnections.com. If you would like to be on the show or you have an idea for the show, you can also reach out and connect with me at kitchentableconversations.com. So I want to set the intention for the show. I do this for every show because I think it's so important that we talk about how we want to show up for it. So in this show, we do everything from the fun stuff to the tough stuff and everything in between. It's really designed to ignite a conversation for families, to strengthen the family, and to create a positive ripple in the world. It also harnesses the 4th gift, which I share, which is the gift of love. And it's about how we choose to celebrate ourselves and others. So it's with that intent that we come to every show with an open heart, an open mind, and a true celebration of the person who's come here today to share their talents and their gifts and their passion with us. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to Kanda Benner, and I'm going to read a little bit of her bio here, and then we're going to bring her on screen so you can meet her. Kanda Benner is a wife and mother to 3 she said she had an exclamation point with this, very active boys. She is also the Morrow County Family and Children First Council Director, and that's in Ohio, as educator for relationships under construction and instructor supervisor for RUC. I'm going to have to ask her what RUC is. We'll talk about that. She currently serves on the Ohio Children's Trust Fund, which helps to prevent child abuse and neglect. She also serves on other boards across the state of Ohio and Morrow County. She is an advisory board member of both OSU, Ohio State University, the Ohio State University Extension, and Nellie's Champions for Kids, a pediatric cancer nonprofit in Central Ohio that helps teens and kids that are battling with cancer. Kanda has helped to create several nonprofits in the Central Ohio area. She is a graduate of Ohio Dominican University, where she earned her MBA, and she's also a graduate of we got the even capped here, Ohio State University, where she received her BS in education. She is the guardian ad litem, and I'm going to make sure I said that right as well, and a foster parent, which is a calling she has had since she was very young. She is a graduate of Next Level Trainings, thank goodness, because honestly, that is how I met Kanda, was through the Next Level Trainings. So with that, let me bring Kanda onto the screen. There she is. Yay. Hi, Kanda.
Hey, Cheryl. How are you?
I'm good. So good.
Great to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, we went through battle together. Yeah. Although she continued the battle further than me, but we both went through some training that was just awesome. And so that's how we connected. And it's been a beautiful connection, and I'm really grateful for it. So
yeah, me too.
But I learned so much about Kanda that I did not know, even when we were in the middle of all that, because even today or today when I'm reading this, right, and she sent me all of her information a while back about what all she does, like, oh my gosh, like what all you do is just like crazy amounts of stuff, right? So I stand in awe of all of that. But I know like you've had this beautiful life journey that's taken you to places, and Next Level was a part of that, but there was a whole road leading up to that. So why don't you talk a little bit about how like, how did you get passionate about what it is that you started doing? And like, how did you land there?
Yeah, so I grew up in a family that was always very helpful to the community, building communities, building our family, building community members. And so from a very young age, I remember being in that type of environment where, we were given gifts to just help people. And so all along throughout my life and different places that I landed really kind of have led me to the position that I hold currently in Morrow County, which is what you said, the Family and Children First Council Coordinator. And basically, it's an organization that kind of makes everybody play nice in the sandbox. We sort of live in a society where agencies operate in silos. Things like, well, I'm bound by funding, I'm bound by policy, I'm bound by rules. And if this particular family doesn't meet the guidelines for us to serve them, then they almost feel like, well, not my issue, I can't really help, let's try to get them someplace else. And so Family and Children First was established in 1992 to be that organization that would bring every agency together and remind them, this is a family that lives in our community. And whether you actually serve them or not, you actually can come to a table and talk about ideas and approaches and policies that really could serve them and move them forward. And a lot of times without even spending money. So I'm super blessed to be in the position that I am in, and that I didn't even know about when I started doing it.
Yeah. So, and I know that like in Ohio, because that's where you are, obviously, we have 88 counties. And so there's a program similar to this in all of those counties.
Actually, they're mandated in each of the 88 counties. So yes, in Ohio, Family and Children First Council is mandated to have that particular agency in all 88 counties. And then across the United States, there's several states who do have something very similar. And a big point that I want to make in this program, if we talk about something in the next half hour or so, and you're sitting there and saying to yourself, well, I don't quite have something like this in my community. This really kind of all started with a bunch of passionate community members and people who said just that. We don't have anything similar. And so what can we do to start this? So hopefully a spark will be lit today if you don't have this in your state, because it works very well together to really serve those families who are in a crisis or do have a child that has extraordinary needs.
So if I were in another state and I didn't know, right? Well, so Ohio, we know, right? But that's only one of 50. So if I was in another, what would I do? Would I go online and just start searching, or is there a certain like arm of government in each state that probably would be, or is that all different as well?
I think it differs as well. So I think maybe we should start smaller and talk about how it looks in Ohio, and then maybe in the next few minutes or so get to the point that you just asked.
Okay.
So, nobody says, I think I'll go through a crisis today. Something just sort of happens. And later on I'll share, and I might even come back and do another show that talks about what the crisis was in our family. But we actually did go through a crisis. And so navigating that crisis, at first, I thought I was alone until I reached out and then found that there were other people who were going through something very similar to what we were going through. And then those people encouraged us to reach out to agencies within our community that might have been able to help us. So a lot of times people will start with churches, a faith-based organization or some kind of agency that's out there that really is not operated by federal dollars or county dollars. It's just a whole bunch of people giving to help that particular organization. And then, so the family gets helped, but then the family realizes might be a little bit greater than just this. And so another organization that a family might reach out to is something like Job and Family Services, which is that agency that sort of helps when, somebody loses a job or somebody needs job training or, there's a loss of income. And so the family needs other supports like maybe food needs or cash needs or medical cards, things like that. And our crisis in particular sort of revolved around the medical card issue. And so we really relied on the big organizations within our community, like the Job and Family Services, like the Health District, Developmental Disabilities. That's what it's still called here in Ohio, the agency that helps out if you have a child or a person living with disabilities. the court system, law enforcement, schools. At the time that we were going through our crisis, though, in the family, our child wasn't even school aged. But there were, after finding out a lot about resources, the schools even jumped on board. And so all those agencies together, nonprofits as well. So even battered women's shelters, homeless shelters, various nonprofits, pregnancy centers, things like that. All of those exist in the communities, mostly across Ohio, and I do believe across the United States, that really can come together to help a family. But at the same time, it's overwhelming when you're going, there's 25 agencies, who do I turn to first?
Yeah.
And so that's sort of why Family and Children First Council came about. The state recognized in 1992 that there really needed to be an agency that would pull everybody together to not let it be an overwhelming process to the family.
Yeah.
That they would have one point of contact. That one point of contact, that person could call all these people and say, okay, I have this family who has such and such need. What can we do to help? And then at the same time, the way that Family and Children First Council is structured is all those directors of all those agencies that I mentioned actually meet together once a month at a table and come around and discuss, not each individual family separately, but anonymously, and where is the community impact? What can we change within our community so that if a family does mirror maybe what this family is going through, then we already have services and supports and a process in place to help future families.
Yeah. So to some extent, we're getting a little feedback, unfortunately, but to some extent we see trends, right? So those trends are, so when you get together, you can see like, okay, we've got these kinds of issues coming up, and you can pull together those resources. Then, like you said, it's not sometimes individual families, but just in general, like what's going to really be beneficial. And I would assume as things change in our culture and our environments, I mean, I just know there's things today that I never had to worry about as a parent, right? That is a concern now with parents, right? Like internet safety and, all those things, right?
Yeah. Well, and so you mentioned something that we do also work with, but the biggest areas that we're seeing are children with autism, children with life-threatening illnesses, mental health, not only of the adults in that family, but then children within that family, and then that child is dealing with friends that have mental health issues as well. So mental health, especially in the state of Ohio, really is kind of being paid a lot of attention to, where we haven't really paid to it a lot in the past. And so my day really consists of a handful of those types of cases, working with families that are dealing with mental health issues, working with families that have a child with a disability, and then working with those families who, like I said, are going through that crisis of a loss of a job or divorce or home burns down or no transportation. And so that's the other thing that's really special about Family and Children First. My crisis is not your crisis, and I cannot, as a coordinator or director, determine if your crisis is small or big. It's what your family, puts that crisis as. Mm-hmm. And if you call us up and you say, I need help, we sort of start mobilizing, okay, what do you need help with? Do you need housing? Do you need a job? Do you need clothes on your back? Do you need food? And then outside of that, do you need mental health counseling? Is there even mental health counseling available? I deal a lot with respite for families. That intermittent care, respite is intermittent care, that where you can just go and take a break and say, I've had enough and I cannot do this anymore. And so you go out and get coffee with a friend, or you just go take a walk, or you go to the grocery store, or you go get a massage. Because we tend to find that, it's overwhelming when you're in this crisis situation. And we also find that when you're overwhelmed, especially as a parent or an adult, that's how abuse starts. Mm-hmm. Abuse on children, abuse to your partners, abuse to animals, any type of abuse could potentially start. And then we're dealing with another crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't want, double, triple, quadruple crisis within a family. And so we try to stabilize a family as fast as possible so that they can recognize that agencies, community supports are there to support them, so that once we deal with whatever it is that they're going through, and not saying that the crisis is going to go away, but then they're better equipped to help take care of themselves moving forward.
Right. Yeah, we're getting a lot of feedback. I don't know why.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Is it like, what kind of feedback?
I can hear me on your side. So anyway, just for somebody, maybe it stopped. We'll just roll. So anyway, I love it because I think that your whole analogy about everybody playing in the sandbox, I just think about when somebody has a health issue, right? Like if my dad, like, I just remember like so many doctors, right? But they were all sort of coordinating his care,
Mm-hmm.
like everybody knew, like everybody had the same, start point and folder, and they knew what the progress was. And I think that we do that sometimes in the health, like once you get into the healthcare system in terms of, doctors communicating, hospitals communicating or whatever. But I don't think that it's as common for what you're talking about, where there's just this connect point, right? That connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
And
perfect.
Yeah, it really connects. So I think it's beautiful. Do you find that there's families though that are, I don't know, like maybe don't know it's there, but is there a concern sometimes about like just like an embarrassment to step into having that kind of help? Like they've never had that before, and how do you get them past that point?
Yeah, absolutely. So I deal with that a lot. People are very prideful, very private.
Mm-hmm.
Very like nobody else understands what I'm going through, so I'm not even going to reach out. First of all, it really helps to have somebody that approaches that family with an open heart and says things like, "You're not alone. We together are going to get through this." And then, going even farther, I've been in this situation that you're going through. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
not exactly alike, but I had to utilize some of these community services to be able to help our family. So that really does help. Word of mouth helps a lot. As a family and children first director, our job is to also connect families together. And so we might even recommend, now that you're in this situation, there's actually a group that you could go to. And if they don't go right away, then maybe I'll have somebody from that group even reach out and contact them with the family's permission. And then kids are actually pretty cool with the way that they connect. Yeah. And, when we were going through our crisis, our child actually connected with other children who were going through the same type of crisis a lot better than we even connected with families. And because of that, because our child was brave enough to reach out for friendships, we now are best friends with some of those families who went through the same crisis that we did. Yeah. So, just recognizing that we're not alone, and, it really sort of is your responsibility when you do go through these crises to use your voice and to reach out and to accept that support. This is not a handout, or it's not anything like that. This is why these agencies exist, or should exist. To really, help or support these people when they're going through a lot of these things.
Yeah, it made me think of something, because I know sometimes the ego, right? We get our ego in the middle of it, and like some people are very private. I know one of the things that this is just something I do, and maybe this would be helpful. I don't know, but like whenever I have to make a really big decision, especially something that like feels like it's really pushing me in my boundaries, right? I just go, okay, first of all, you can't, there's the path of love and the path of fear. And I want to make sure that I'm always on the path of love and not on the path of fear, because that, so I go, okay, which am I on? Because if I'm on the fear path, then I need to rethink my decision. The other thing I do is I say, okay, I'm going to take my ego, and I literally think about picking up my ego and setting it over here. And now I say, with my ego not in the middle of it, what decision would I make? And when I can make a decision that is on a path of love and doesn't have my ego sitting in the middle of it, and I make that same decision, then I know I'm making a good decision. Yeah. But I think you got to get the families to get to that point of just saying, here, take your ego, set it over here. Now, what decision do you want to make? Right. Yeah. So,
and, what made me think when you were talking is we do this process called wraparound. And wraparound, if you choose as a family, you could have members of each of those agencies actually come and meet with you together. so that we're all kind of brainstorming together and we all hear one person talking, but we're all on the same page. And wraparound is very big in Ohio, and actually also in Wisconsin and in Maryland and a couple other places as well. It's growing rapidly. But this idea is that we all really, like I talked earlier about how the heads of the agencies sit around at a table and brainstorm and talk about policy. It's sort of like a mini version of that, where the family is the focus and they lead this discussion. And we all sit around and we all check our egos at the door, and we don't try to put these families in a box, because a lot of times people will show up when we're not doing a wraparound, or when people aren't familiar with wraparound, they'll show up and say, well, here's what I can offer you. Can I fit you in that box, per se? And the reality is families don't fit into a box. And when you try to put them in a box, you're using your ego and what you know, what might be good for that family, and it's not good for that particular family. So we do family-centered, family-driven wraparound, where the agencies do come together, even if they don't feel like this family, they're currently serving that family at the time. They come together and maybe something will spark and say, well, we can do that, or we can help out with that, or, you know, we have the capabilities to. So it's really nice to be able to do this idea of wraparound, which, like I said, is very big in Ohio right now.
Yeah, that's great to know. So I do, again, I think it's about these families just really, you know, number one, making a decision to move forward. Do you find that, like, from your perspective, would you encourage the whole family? And I mean, obviously, if they're really young, maybe not, but the whole family to sit down and have this conversation? Or do you think that this is best just for a conversation for the parents to have?
Well, again, it would be up to each individual family. Personally, I do feel that it's best that the entire family participates, because you know, a snapshot could potentially be that both parents live in the home with multiple children. You know, that's your everyday American family. But where we're going now is a lot of parents are, you know, divorced or separated, and so they're in two separate households. A lot of families are blended, and so you have kids that live with mom, kids that live with dad. You know, siblings that were not shared by mom and dad are now living in the home because maybe mom and dad are with somebody else. You might even have kids that are raised by grandparents, aunts and uncles, maybe even your friendly neighbor are raising those children because parents are not around. You know, with this opioid epidemic that Ohio is dealing with, and I really think nationally too, the makeup of the family has changed. And so it's not our responsibility to define what a family looks like. We leave it up to each individual. And so not only does the family say, here's what our family looks like, then also here's how this is going to work. I do encourage the entire family, because what also is special about Family and Children First is not only do we serve the children, but we serve the child with a disability or mental health diagnosis, but we'll serve every child within that family, whatever their needs might be. And then we also serve the family as well.
Gotcha.
So if it's a grandparent raising grandkids, we will help with a support group. We'll help with medical cards. We will help with respite care, you know, and maybe mom and dad who are raising that child in the same situation, they may not need as much respite. So it each differs depending on the family of what their needs potentially could be.
Right. So, well, okay. So I think that's great, because I think anytime that the family can have the conversation, you know, not like hiding it from the kids and like they can't know or whatever. I never, in general, I think that ends up being bad. And the reason I think that, and sometimes it might be necessary, but I just feel like kids are so in tune. And when there's a problem, I'll never forget one time David was sitting at lunch with somebody, and there were two other kids sitting there, and one of the kids said to the other, and David was witnessing it, said, gee, I'm really sorry about your dad losing his job. And the other kid started crying, because like got teary-eyed, because he didn't even know his dad. So he heard it from somebody else, right? So here's the family thinking that they're keeping this the secret, and they're protecting the child, and then school and somebody else already knows, and then he hears it somewhere else. So I think anytime there's this coming together of the family with communication, it's always going to be the best scenario, you know, to happen.
100%. We also do encourage that as well. because like you said, kids are actually smarter than we adults think they are. And, we came from a society, at least I did, that you don't really talk about your issues in the family, or you don't talk about it with kids because they don't understand. Listen, with today and the technology that we have and the internet and, books and magazines and what happens in schools, your children do know things that are going on.
They do.
And if you don't speak to them about what's happening, they're going to make up stories in their heads. And then that's where the mental health issues sometimes start.
Right. Somebody to educate them besides you or something online.
Correct. And, you want to make it child appropriate.
Sure.
And there's ways that you can do that. And then, Family and Children First Council coordinators, directors across the state of Ohio can even help out with that as well. We have a ton of resources out there. And one of our partners that I forgot to mention, the schools, when you reach out, sometimes people forget that the schools exist and they are a wealth of information and resources and very knowledgeable as well. And so we do have school superintendents that come to our table. Like I said, the law enforcement commissioners in each community, the directors of DD and Job and Family and judges, all of them come together, and in each community, they really do have a good pulse on what children are going through and really do care about the children within the community. And in fact, here in Ohio, I was just at a symposium yesterday where the governor was there. And it's really nice when you do have a governor in your state that recognizes that children are human beings too. Mm-hmm. And our governor, Mike DeWine, has really had an influx of money come into Family and Children First Council and all across the state that serves these children that are going through mental health diagnoses and developmental disabilities. And we call them multi-system youth, to be able to serve them better and come up with creative ways to serve them. So there is actually a lot going on that if families reach out and are open and are vulnerable, then we are able to support and get that family moving forward, either living with that crisis going forward or dealing with that crisis until it is no longer a crisis, and then they don't have to deal with it again.
Right. And I'm sure that depends on what the issue is. Obviously, there's health challenges that are long-term and, obviously have to be dealt with long-term.
Sure. Well, and, not to discount what goes on with children with autism, but 10, 15 years ago, there were not a lot of services or supports out there. And today, you look at a child, or we're working with a child that has autism, and there's so many great things that are going on that highlights that child's talents and what they can do and what they are good at, that a lot of kids that have autism, it's not even recognizable because we are learning ways to better access what they can do and what their gifts are. And so, is it ever going to go away? Probably not. But at the same time, you learn to live with it a lot better so that it's no longer a crisis in your family. And then, like I said, sometimes you don't even consider it a crisis anymore. You're just living with a special child. I mean,
I've over the last little bit here, I've actually talked to several people who, are actually come from that space of the autism world. And it's like, but there's really like, the children are extraordinary. And when you can look at it from that perspective, right? Like there's so much gift and beauty in it in many ways, right? Too. So, it becomes not this thing that's a negative for the family. It actually becomes something that enhances and makes the family, even more special. So, I love that. I want to go back because we got about a couple minutes here, but I want to go back just a little bit again to something you were talking about earlier, and that is, again, we don't know what this looks like in every state. Obviously, I love hearing that Ohio is getting this right because Ohio is my state, right? Like, I mean, I know our opioid crisis here also tops the list, and that's not a good topping of the list to be on. But we also have this really beautiful thing that I think is happening, which is why I was excited to have you come on the show. And, because I think this part we're getting right. And in some states, maybe if they aren't quite there yet about how everybody can really get together, come together synergistically to really create these solutions, what would that look like for someone to reach out and say, hey, we want this in our state as well, and how could they connect and maybe make some of that happen?
Yeah. So, we always remind people that your representatives are in office for a reason. They represent you. And so every state has representatives that you should be able to reach out to. And you can even use what's going on in Ohio and say, hey, there's an organization that sort of connects everybody together. One, do we have an organization like that if you don't know? Or two, can we start to write some legislation so an organization like that can exist?
Right.
And then, like I said, it just takes a couple of passionate people to ignite that fire, to ignite other passionate people to get around a topic, and you are the change makers. And so if you don't have something like this in your state, you absolutely can start it. Some of those bigger agencies, and we call them the big five, are, again, I keep mentioning job and family, developmental disabilities, courts, schools,
hospitals.
Health district, we call it, because the hospitals are sometimes part of the health district. Those big five really do have a lot of pull within each community. And so if you can have a champion that would come out of those five that can even just say, okay, we're going to meet to talk about some of the things that are going on in our community, and that's also where it starts, is in those, grassroots efforts where you're looking big picture, but you're not starting big picture. Start
Right.
small and rally those troops and really start to make a difference within your community. And like I said, what's been going on in Ohio is starting to spread to other states, because people are coming here and going, what's this idea of Family and Children First Council, and really like how it works. It just makes sense.
It does. It absolutely makes perfect sense. So, all right. So we end, time flies, man, when we're talking about such great stuff you're sharing. So thank you. We like to end every show sort of with and I didn't prepare you for this, so you can just wing it, because I know you can wing it. But we do a dot, like a drop of thought. Like if you were going to leave one last parting thought with everybody, what would that be? Maybe it's at the level or at the national level, wherever you think.
Yeah, I think to really hit home, your voice is important, and you are the champion of your family, and you can control the things that happen, and you can look at things in a positive way or a negative way when you're dealing with crisis that go on. But, using your voice and reaching out for help really is up to you. And so when you do that, you're really opening up a world of things, of possibilities of getting that support and help, and then maybe even you being the change maker and moving forward. So like I said, use your voice, reach out for help. Mm-hmm. So that's the best.
No, that's beautiful. So, well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. I'm excited about what's going on. I think it's really cool. And I think that there's going to be a lot of families who are going to now recognize that they can reach out in their own communities and find these services that are available. And I love bringing light to that. So thank you for your heart and what you do. My little dot that I always end every show with is just, in a world where we can be anything, be kind.
Love it.
So anyway, thank you, Kanda.
Thanks, Cheryl. This was fun. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.